What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Excited to talk about speed and pace and talk about it from a business perspective and also dig into it from an SEO perspective. The topic is how to manage expectations and pace in the search economy. David, I feel like you've been talking a lot about speed. I know you like race cars, so speed is kind of your game, and obviously you're trying to push a business forward. So I figured this might be a topic you've got a lot to say on. So, you excited for this?
This is a good one. I do like race cars. I like going fast. Yeah, this should be fun.
Let's start off with this one. How do you think about pace or speed to get things done in your role as the CEO?
Yeah, so I even go back and I use an analogy or a story from when I was in college. You could probably relate to this as well. You go to college and everybody says, "Hey, don't procrastinate. Get your stuff done early, start often." So I was like, paper due in 3 months. I was getting started on it this afternoon. Like, I thought that was where I hung my hat of like, I'm gonna get started with things early. There's a guy that I just knew on campus. His name was Hank. I might send this to him because he'd find it funny. But uh, I knew he had a paper. I don't remember why that was due in like 12 hours. Like, Hank, you done with that paper? And he goes, "Oh, I haven't started it yet." I'm like, dude, it's due in like 12 hours. And like, Hank's like this guy that I like looked up to, still do. But it's like, dude, it's due in 12 hours. Like, what do you mean you haven't started? He's like, "I don't know. It's only gonna take me like 6 hours. So I'll start in probably 5 to 6 hours and I'll write it and turn it in." I'm like, "That's all the time." Like, what if something happens? He goes, "It'll only take me 6 hours. That's all I need to do. I'm just gonna do it 6 hours before it's due." I say all that, and I started to think through like as it applies to business. I come back to that story years later. The amount of time that we give something is the amount of time that it's going to take. If you give me 3 months to write a paper, I'm going to take 3 months and write the paper. If you give me 6 hours, like Hank gave himself, going to get 6 hours. Funny enough, we were in this, I think, the same class. We got the same grade. I spent 3 months working on this thing in and out. He spent 6 hours, literally the morning of. Got it done. We got the same grade, maybe within a percent or two, and we were good. Like, I say all of that, and we talk about pace of play in business, and I guess to take it away from college papers and move it into business. The biggest thing that I focus on as pace of play and is speed within the team is not giving things too much time to get done. We are not going for perfect, and to quite frankly, we'll never get to perfect anyway. I don't think a task is ever done perfectly. There's always ways to improve it. I would much rather us get over that initial hump of having something be a true MVP or a minimal deliverable just to get the ball rolling. But if something takes 3 hours, do not let it take 3 weeks. Do not let it take 3 days. Let's only let it take three, maybe 4 hours and get it done. And I'd say it's compacting or reducing the amount of time of when we talk to something to when it actually gets done. And that's what I focus on with speed at Numa and being the CEO of a company that's growing really quickly is how little time is going to be between a strategy, a tactic, a project that we talk about, and when it's actually complete and whatever that definition of complete looks like, right? I don't want to be the team that talks about something and takes 6, 7, 8 months for it to happen. I would love for us to be a team that talks about something and we take action that day and it's done in a week, right? It may be a week's the right time, wrong time, right? Every situation is a little bit differently, but the way I think about speed isn't run around with our heads cut off for fun and just to say that we're moving quickly, but it's once we decide, or the famous word that we've used a lot this week, discern the right type of work to do, and we talked about it. How quickly do we break ground, and how quickly until it gets done, right? Once we decide on the right direction, let's not waste our time and spin our wheels.
You mentioned deadlines, and I think deadlines are a fascinating topic in order to get stuff done. When you are uh, setting a deadline with a group of people, and people have to come together to do work to hit that deadline on top of all of the other responsibilities that they have in play, how do you make sure that the deadline that you set is appropriate? And it could be something where we need this thing in a month, but we're saying, the deadline's a week and a half. Like, how do you think about dropping that deadline in consideration with all the other work that's happening across the business?
There's a really good book. I don't think it's behind me. It might. It might be somewhere back there. Four Disciplines of Execution. It was one of the first business books I read. And in the book, it talks about the whirlwind of business. And it says Even if you removed a leadership team from a business, the employees would still find a way to be busy. Broadly speaking, we'll all find a way to be busy. There's always things to do or get done or feel busy with. But as you think about deadlines, right? What makes a task better than another task within a business? It's likely based against the prioritization of the business, the goals that we're working toward, the rocks that we're working towards. I think that's the biggest thing. In what, 2 weeks, 2 weeks in one day, you'll be out in Denver. We'll be sitting down probably right around this time, mid quarterly planning. That's going to be the rocks in the goals that we set for Q4. And I share that to say, let's say in a month, you have two tasks on your plate and you're trying to figure out what to do first or quicker or with more intensity. We're going to pick the one that most closely aligns to us completing a goal or completing a rock. And that is where the vision really comes from of what work we need to be doing. Because again, there's always work that needs to get done. There's always work that we can be busy with. And to be fair, some of it still needs to get done, but what needs to get done first and the quickest always comes from the rocks that we need to be completing or the goals that we are set and are working towards completing as well.
What are some of the things that get in the way and kind of hinder speed in an agency like Numa? What are some of those observations you've made as kind of the overseer of business operations?
I'd say in part of our learning curve, we don't always do the best at being priorities or like setting priorities and understanding what helps a rock or a goal. I'd say that can always be a struggle. But the one thing in the type of business that we have in a client services business, client comes first and foremost, almost always. And whether to a fault or not, a client situation, a client quote unquote fire, a client need, a client question, whatever it may be, something with a client that can vastly change the way your day looks. So I always say, prepare your day, build a plan of what needs to be done, have your priorities, but almost expect that something's going to come up. Don't build your day down to the eighth hour to a T so you know what's going to happen. Give yourself some buffer because something is going to happen, especially if you're client facing, that you need to take into consideration and into account. Because at the end of the day, a lot of our team serves clients, and the one thing that you've heard me say, we have client managers and client success managers and people that are client facing, but the clients are our clients, and when there's a need or a want from a client, it's a let's make sure as a team we can meet that want. Maybe a client success manager can do it on their own, but sometimes I'll get flagged. I'm sure you haven't been flagged, but maybe you will at some point, right? Like the client situation and the client nature of our business always comes first, and that can definitely throw you for a little bit of a ride within a day, but that's never a bad thing.
So this is kind of nuanced, but I think about client impact and just how a client's needs and wants can set your whole day off course because clients are the priority. When you have individuals on a team who are all responsible for maybe hitting that deadline that you said, and one of those individuals maybe's day or days have been impacted by a client's need, which then hinders the deadline because it needs to be collaborative and people are relying on people. Like, is it just simply like you just need to communicate that this is happening, so this might take me off my task for a couple days, something else? Like, how do you think about the management and then eventually like getting over the line and getting what you need done on time based on clients needs and expectations?
I would always say it's healthy to set expectations. So Brett, I'm gonna get you an email. We were talking before this about a video I need to send you. I'm gonna get that video to you by end of day today. And let's say I leave this podcast. It's what 11:30, and I get a phone call at 12, 12:31, 1:32, 2:33, and I don't get to it all. Somewhere in the midst of that, and you say, "Hey Brett, I committed to sending this video to you. It's not going to happen. You don't care why. I'm not going to bore you with all the details of why I'm getting phone calls. It's not going to happen. My new commitment's going to be tomorrow. I apologize. I'll get it to you then." And then you got to follow through, right? The way that I think, right, clients inherently know timelines are going to change, right? There's always new information to be found. There's things that are going to be popping up. That's fine. But the way that you communicate yourself around those deadlines is really good. And to not create a habit around always missing deadlines. Be way different if this video, quote unquote, it's not really that important for me to send you. But let's imagine it's the most important thing that I need to get done today. And it just doesn't happen. You're going to be mad. You say, "Hey, I built my day around me getting this video. Now my work's delayed, which means somebody else's work might be delayed." And again, you can't always avoid that, but I'd rather know it in advance and know what's to come so I can prep against it, because there's two different things there, right? If I set the expectation I'm going to get you something by end of day and I don't, well, your day's crushed. And if somebody was relying on you to send something that was waiting on me, now their day's messed up. But if I give you a 4 or 5 hour notice that I'm just not going to hit it, well, all of a sudden you can change your timeline. You can go do something else. You can cascade that down to the rest of the team, right? It's starting that communication of being on top of deadlines, but it's from a book I've read as well. Making an agreement with a team member and then sticking to it, right? Things have to come down to really clear agreements. Brett, I'm going to get this to you by end of day today. If I don't, I'll get it to you tomorrow and I'll let you know as soon as possible if I can't get it to you today. That's an agreement. As long as you and I can hold to that, it's a lot easier to work moving forward and trust one another, get that stuff done. And I think the same applies for a client as well.
You obviously have a system around that, and I'm guessing that has happened a few times in your run here at building Numa. We are talking a lot about building culture. There are new people that are coming in. How do you think about in the culture development of the business? How do you think about speed and its application and just making sure everyone's on the same page with how things get done and setting those right expectations?
Yeah, we talk about flow a lot internally. I don't know how much we've talked about it on the podcast, but flow, really how we work. And if you put a name to our culture, you get flow. And it's making sure all our work flows together. It flows naturally. It doesn't feel stressful. It doesn't feel tough, right? A big part of that is speed. But I wouldn't say it's speed for the sake of moving quick. It's speed where we have confidence in our actions. And I would say that's one big thing about our team is that oftentimes we can make a decision and run really, really quickly. Sometimes we don't know if that's the right path or the wrong path. And I would say for somebody new coming into Numa that wants to work here or is working here, or even a client that wants to better understand how we work, we might feel a little slow in deciding the direction that we want to take. But once we decide the direction that we take, we move really, really quickly. We just went through this as we look at updating our CRM and getting a true CRM in the business. We had a lot of good discussions around what is needed. What do we need? Why do we need it? We found HubSpot. And as soon as we found HubSpot, we paid, we onboarded, we're already rocking. It should be live in 2 weeks, right? There's something to be said about having patience at the macro scale of larger business strategy, and the business isn't going to change overnight, but having speed at the micro scale of there are certain tactics and actions that need to take place in order to make sure that we're still growing the company.
How do, and I know we've got several different operating environments here, but how does the environment, whether it's, virtual, hybrid, in person, how do you think about that as you're, setting culture, setting expectations for how we work?
You've played a video game before, I'm sure. Let's call trying to think. I don't play a ton of video games. It's been a while, but let's call it Madden. And you can set the computer difficulty, right, to like easy, medium, legendary, whatever, right? There's a scale of difficulty. I would say distributing the culture that we have at Numa is definitely harder because we have people all over the place in a good way, right? We have some in a Denver office, some in an Indiana office. We have some overseas. We have some across the US. We have remote, hybrid, in office, a little bit of everything, right? And that creates a challenge of making sure everything's distributed across the board. But I also think it starts to poke holes in where our culture might be weak. So it's easier to fix it up and make sure we have a strong culture as well. So without having a very diverse set of teammates all over the world, but also in role and type, I think it challenges us to have a better culture and really pushes us to find where the holes are and patch those up as well. So it definitely means we need to be a little bit more strategic with how we talk about culture, how we roll it out, how we implement it. But it also means we can have a lot more fun with finding the holes, patching them, and building a really strong team.
So maybe moving this over to client relationship and speed. I've heard this theme has come up on this podcast through conversations with you, conversation with other teammates, through just other people in the market who kind of do what we do. Is that SEO is not one of those things that happens overnight. It takes a lot of time, and typically, I would imagine when people come to us for help with SEO, there's an existing lingering problem. Website's not performing, inbound is low, what a million of other topics. How do we set, like, what is the right way to set the right expectation with those clients out of the gates, knowing that, like, we want to move fast, we want to prioritize speed, but this discipline that we're about to work on together inherently takes time.
I think it's similar to kind of how we talked about the business as well, macro patience and micro speed. There's a patience that needs to come with the larger business strategy of building an SEO or a paid or even a search campaign that generates results. but there's a tactical speed that needs to be brought into the equation as well to move quick on the things that we know needs to get done. I say the hardest thing to set an expectation around is just because we're moving quick on an analysis or updating the technical SEO of the site or writing a couple pieces of content, moving quick with the tactics, that doesn't always mean that the results are going to move quickly as well. That just means those are the actions to get the ball turning to even give us a chance at results, right? So it's tough to always say we're going to move really, really quickly. That doesn't mean the results are going to come in quickly or just as quickly, but it's going to create an environment and momentum within your campaign to really get that done. And I think that's the biggest thing is that SEO does not always work overnight. I can't turn it on and magically have an influx of leads. The nice thing though is that if you can wait it out, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, however long that might be, it's pretty consistent on the other side of that. And what I would say to all of the prospects that come in and want to be clients is that clients are a little frustrated at times that results haven't come quicker. But once they start coming in, they're really, really pleased that they're coming in and they're super glad they didn't stop the campaign either, right? So all good things come with time is the easiest way to state it, but there's a little bit of a delayed gratification with SEO as well. And that's where while we're waiting for those results to compound, we're going to do everything in the moment as quickly as possible to make sure that we can get the job done once those results start coming in.
You're a man of many analogies. You
Maybe
like
too much.
you like speed. You like SEO. You also like to go to the gym and work out. Is it similar to is SEO similar to going to the gym? And I think about it from the perspective of like I'm going to keep creating content, and maybe that content doesn't like take me to page one overnight, but if I stay consistent and highlight the right keywords, create quality content, then eventually I'll move up. Much like at the gym, like you're not going to go to the gym for a week and then all of a sudden lose 10 pounds and gain all this muscle mass, but you're going to need to do the right things over a course of time. That's kind of how I think about it based on what I've learned about how we do it, but I want to get your thoughts on it.
I thought of this podcast today and tried to think of a good analogy, but about a year and a half ago, I did my first power clean since like high school, movement in the gym for those unfamiliar with it. Um, let's say I've power clean. I'm going to do quick math, a year and a half, let's call it 100 weeks. And it's a little over a year and a half, but I want easy math today. And let's say I did 30 power cleans a week. What is that? About 3,000 power cleans. And I've gone from not knowing how to do it to like, I don't know, I can do it pretty well. I put up good weight, 215, 225 for reps. That feels good. It matches the other people in the gym, right? If I was to sit there one single day in the gym and do 3,000 reps of power clean, I wouldn't have been where I'm at today, right? There's an art of like doing a few, figuring out what needs to work, testing, resting, going at it again, and then doing the same thing, going at it again, right? There's a certain amount of time that needs to happen. I might have a really, really, really strong, intense workout, but I need the time to compound and really, bring results to the table. I think SEO is the same way as well, right? Let's say we write, I'm pulling a number out of head, 40 or 50 blogs over the course of a year. We do certain research for you. We do all the individual tactics. Part of the art of SEO is that stuff has to index. It has to go to Google. It has to take time to really find its footing and then start generating the results. If we were to post that all at once, you wouldn't have the same results if we were to do it over the course of a year as well. So I think SEO is very much like that. I've equated it to a stock portfolio as well. It takes time to get the ball rolling. And then when it does, it's like the best thing in the world. And I think that comes back to SEO is that it takes time. It takes focus and energy to do it right. It's going to be very fast, intense amounts of work in the moment that add up over the course of time.
I like to like plug different changes and evolutions of things that are happening within the business on the podcast. And one of those things has been just the addition of the CSM role at Numa. And I view this CSM role as the communicator, the one that sets the right expectations with the client to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And speed obviously is a part of those conversations. Maybe talk about why CSM is a new role at Numa and how you think about that role in setting the right expectations with clients.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have CSMs on client accounts. It's a newer ad, even though it might seem normal. We took a role and split it in two and split the responsibility. And I think if you hear that, you say, oh, great, you took one role, split it in two. That means the client's going to get the same amount of work, right? And the goal with the CSM, which I'm really excited about, is that we've increased our pace of play with clients to where, let's say we were at 100% before, it seems like we're at 150, 160% output now. and we're doing better work, and we have more people working for a client, which is exciting as well. And that's why I think I'm mostly excited to carry it out. But with a CSM, somebody that can really have a business conversation with a client, understand their goals and wants, and solve problems at a high level. And that frees up our strategist team to take that problem, take the guidance from a CSM, and strategize how to solve that with them, right? So you get somebody that's very focused on the external relationship. You get somebody really focused on thinking about that account 24/7. Used to be the same person, now it's two. And I think the biggest advantage with two is that we can go that much quicker, that much faster for clients, and have that much more output. Uh, and for a lot of our clients, it just means we're going to get the results quicker, which is always a good thing.
Maybe to round this out, thinking about SEO and how it takes time, it takes consistency and commitment. Is there any point in the process of creating a good SEO strategy where you can lean into speed and pace, and that can be an advantage for what you're trying to do and placement you're trying to get on the internet?
I would say you don't want to outrun yourself, but definitely find a pace that's consistent and maybe push it a little bit faster. But finding something that's a good, consistent rhythm and falling into pace where it's still quick, but you can still challenge yourself to get things out, I think is really positive. I'll use our podcast as an example. We could do an episode a month, we could do four a week. There's probably a happy medium, which is where we're at now, one or two a week. And it's finding that pace to where it can be consistent. We can build momentum and repetition within that system, and over the course of time we'll find results. Maybe we'll challenge each other to go quicker next quarter, and we'll do 2 or 3 a week instead of one or two. I don't know, but finding a rhythm that's attainable and consistent over the course of time, not just something where you'll do it for a month and burn out, I think is really important as you talk about speed, let alone in SEO, but in marketing in general. The flashes in the pan, doing something for a month or a quarter and then not doing it, doesn't really ever work. But doing something for years on end and letting that compound is where the magic happens.
Final. This could be business related, life related, anything. Everything is on the table. When you think of speed, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Oh, that's it's gonna show where I came from. NASCAR, obviously. Well, see, I
Tra-
might have a. I don't know if I have a NASCAR behind me, but there's normally this will. Here it is. Favorite livery ever, Jeff Gordon Pepsi NASCAR sits on my desk. So there you go. First thing that comes to mind, almost always a NASCAR for whatever point you ask, but definitely for speed.
Trade and paint. There's an analogy there somewhere with SEO that we should probably come up with. But
That there is.
glad we could do this. I think speed is a fun topic. Hopefully, all of you out there listening have some understanding now, better understanding of how we think about speed in terms of growing our business at Numa and helping our clients.